Barclay is back. The guy from Pathfinder who saves Voyager and they're able to communicate with home. Hurrah! And yet, we discover his addiction started back here. The problems that his superiors have on Pathfinder, Picard and Geordi and Riker and Troy have problems with him on this one. Hey everybody, welcome to the G. Louise book series. I'm Kristina, Kristina, where we talk about Star Trek and books. I read books, talk about books. I watch Star Trek, talk about Star Trek. I need your thumbs up and like and subscribe desperately. So please show your support and hit the thumbs up. It's free, doesn't cost anything. I got hair in my eye. All right, it's Friday. That means it's Star Trek Day. We will always be doing Star Trek on Fridays, so please stay tuned every Friday. And we're in a new month, and we're on a new disc. Disc 6, Season 3, Episode 169, Hollow Pursuits, The Most Toys 170, Sarek 171, Menage a Troy 172. We will be doing these today. Today we are doing Hollow Pursuits with Dr. Barclay, with Lieutenant Commander Barclay. Oh, good God. You know, when I saw this, I thought it was real. I was like, oh, wow, yay, there's Barclay, yippee, congratulations, there's Barclay, we're going to see some great Barclay. And Guinan, I love when Guinan's on. And I bought it. It's real. Until it became unreal. And I was like, oh, good grief. I don't want to know. So, Barclay is on 10 forward. And he's talking to Guinan. And Whoopi is saying that she doesn't want any trouble. And Barclay asks, why would there be trouble? Uh-huh. Guinan says, because wherever you go, trouble follows. God, are we trying to do James Bond here? Shaken, not stirred situation. Then Gordy walks in and says, Lieutenant Barclay, you are on duty. And Barclay says, is that a fact? And I'm like, oh, good grief. And Geordi says, it is, and you will observe it, so get back to your post. And Barclay says, look, pal, why don't you do me a favor? Take yourself and your holier-than-thou attitude and get out of my life. Barclay pushes Geordi and he falls down. Riker gets up from his seat and then tells Barclay this is insubordination. Barclay gets up and says, here's to subordination, and he makes an attempt to strangle Riker. And this is where I'm like, no! They just pushed it too far. They really just pushed it too far with this. They really did. I mean, come on. It just, really? Do you buy this? Do you buy this? Do you buy that Jonathan Frakes let Barclay do this to him? That Will Riker, Commander Will Riker, the #1 tough guy, let Barclay do this in front of him, in front of Troy. Do you buy that? Good God. I was happy to see Barclay, and this whole Dream Hollow sequence was just too much. My eyes rolled back inside of my head and got stuck. All right, what are the writers trying to pull here? We know that Troy is supposed to be with Riker. His confidence excites her. Oh, good grief. Really? I'm so excited to see Conan O'Brien again, Calamini, Chief O'Brien. And, I'm wondering what his real day job was. Because these episodes, these sporadic guest appearances, they probably don't pay enough to support. So I'm wondering what he does. Was he doing other acting series or anything like that at the time? Does anybody know? But Jordy is telling Riker he doesn't know what to do with him. He's always late. He never gives his best effort. He just slides by. I'm telling you, I can't deal with him anymore. I mean, how does a guy like this make it through the academy? Riker says this time we spoke to the captain about Barclay. Is that nice? Is that nice to promote name calling on a show like this? It's really not called for. Um, that's what Wesley calls him. You keep that to yourself. Jordy says it fits. One of the techs alerts them to a broken seal. Jordy says you better destroy it. Those samples will be tainted. Barclay walks in and hides behind some barrels. Jordy spots him and asks him if it's a problem to report to duty on time. Barclay says, no, I'm sorry. It's just that I had a very important communique which required my immediate response. Jordy says, I don't want to hear it. Now he says, we are having an intermittent problem with this anti-gravity unit. I want to see what you can do. Riker says, Mr. Barclay, I am tired of seeing your name on report. I know that what you don't know what you got away with at your last posting, but this is the Enterprise. We have a decent set of standards here. Barclay says that's understood. Right. After the opening credits, Picard is doing a voiceover. We're taking on board a load of special tissue donated by the Malakians for shipment to Naomi 4. The samples could prove vital to the containment of an outbreak of Carillium fever on that world. Barclay says everything looks normal to me. Oh look, it's Calamini, Chief O'Brien. I've already talked about that. Um, uh, Geordi says computer activate anti-gravity log and it goes up and they lose another container. Barclay says I don't understand. Geordi says he needs more people in cargo bay 5. Barclay just stands there and Geordi says we could use a hand. Barclay says I'll disassemble it later. Commander, it shouldn't do it well. I mean, he repeats the phrase a couple times. Next scene is the captain's ready room. Picard says he's not accustomed to seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of his crew. Riker says, I guess the question is whether Mr. Barclay is Enterprise material. Picard says, I assume by your request for his transfer that you think he's not, Commander. Geordi says, well, I hate to say it, but I always thought I could work with anybody, but I just don't understand this guy, Broccoli. He makes everybody nervous. Picard goes, Broccoli? Again! They should not be promoting name calling. They just should not be promoting name calling. Riker says, young Mr. Crusher started it. I guess it caught on. Ricard says, let's get that on court, shall we? This is every indication that he's served competently in Starfleet for years. Ratings on board the Zukov was satisfactory. Zukov, is that a Russian ship? I was just thinking. In fact, I recall Captain Gleason speaking quite highly of him before his transfer. Riker says, in retrospect, I wonder if Captain Gleason wasn't buttering our bread a little. He knew that we needed a diagnostic engineer. I've examined Barclay's physical profile. He has a history of seclusive tendencies. It is noted at the Academy more than once. Picard says, yet he chose this way of life. He has made the same commitment to Starfleet that we all have. It's easy to transfer a problem to someone else. It's too easy. Geordi says, Captain, it's not like that. I have tried. Picard says, Geordi, to try harder. He's a member of your team. Try to find some way to help him, to make a positive contribution. Get to know the man better. Make him your best friend. Geordi's like, with all due respect, my best friend? Really? You think? Picard said, Geordi says, I can barely tolerate being in the same room with the man. Picard says, I suggest you put your personal discomfort on aside, Commander. Um, Geordi goes back to the cargo bay and says, Hey, Reg, ask him how it's going. Barclay says he hasn't found the problem. Geordi says, It's all right, no problem. Barclay says he's planning to run a diagnostic on the gravitation inverter circuits. Isn't the first thing you do with a problem you run a diagnostic? I was just wondering. Gordy says, Good plan. I say we are in good hands. And Red says, Well, I'll see you get a preliminary report. Jordy says, Whenever. Barclay says, Before the end of the day. Jordy says, Fine. As he's walking away, Jordy says, Hey, Reg, how about sitting in on the mission briefing with my senior officers tomorrow morning? Barclay says, Me? The briefing? And he just looks like he's in a state of panic. And he goes, Do you want me to prepare something? And Jordy's like, No, just be in attendance. Okay, I wanted to point out we have a 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it data? We have so many extras in this scene, and they have lines. That's so exciting. Hey, I was in Star Trek, and not only was I in Star Trek, I wasn't just a walk on, I had lines. That is so bragging rights, don't you think? Massive bragging rights. And of course, Barclay is late for the meeting. Okay, so Barclay runs in. Geordi says this trip to Nami 4 is pretty routine, so we'll have plenty of time to realign the magnetic capacitors of both the matter and antimatter and Jeffy. Jeffy Costa, that will be your assignment. Jeffy says, well, we probably ought to do the flow regulators maintenance at the same time, Commander. Geordi says that's a good idea. Ensign Crusher will be putting some hours with us this week as his training duties. And Barclay's not happy about this. You can just see it on his face. So I will be assigning him to assist you, Mr. Myers. Be sure to teach him the difference between impulse and warp drive, please. Lieutenant Barclay has been working on the mystery of the anti-grav failure we had yesterday. Your preliminary report had a couple of interesting theories, Reg. And Barclay panics. Ah, you put me on the spot again. Ah. Barclay says it wasn't a maintenance problem. He's going to look for a surge in the transfer coils. Wesley interrupts, and it just, poor Barclay. He's just like, this kid. Wesley interrupts and says, a coil surge wouldn't have resulted in a field dissipation. Barclay says, I know that. Geordi jumps in and says, we shouldn't ignore the possibilities, Wes. Wesley again interrupts and says, you ought to check the flow capacitor. A breakdown of that could cause the chain collapse of the anti-grav field. Barclay says, I know that. Geordi says, okay. Let's take care of the realignment procedure. Now, I bet this is real. Until I just, no. They started getting intimate. I was just like, no, God, really? I was like, no. And Barclay's complaining about Wesley and the flux capacitor. Hey, Back to the Future, good plug there, flux capacitor. And we know Troy belongs with Riker. And I get it, it's a fantasy. But in the moment, you don't see it till the end. And it's just, oh, good grief. Oh. Really? Good God, really? I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. Okay, so the next scene, they're in Ted Forward at the table, and Wesley says, I thought that was the point of a briefing, to discuss different approaches. Jordy says, it's not that you did anything wrong, Wes. It's just that Barclay, well, he's my new project. Duffy says, Broccoli's a real project, all right. Jordy says, I need to draw him out some more. Wesley says, and I put him down. Poor Broccoli. Data says, pardon me, why is Lieutenant Barclay being referred to clandestinely as a vegetable? Wesley says, it's a joke, you know, a nickname. Data says, nicknames generally denote fondness, a diminutive shared between friends. Jody said, Data is absolutely right. The nickname stops here and now. Captain's orders. Duffy's drink starts leaking. Wesley says, what happened to your glass? Then Data is examining the glass. Nucleosynthesis, the structure of the glass has been altered at the atomic level. Jordy says, is this a replicator problem? Data says unlikely. A problem with the replicator would have affected the contents as well as the glass. But the liquid in the glass was synthetic replication of light ale of Earth origin, which I believe is what Lieutenant Duffy had ordered. Jordy says, well, I can't detect any residual radiation or unusual chemical compounds that would have caused this. Data says the most probable explanation is that the glass came into contact with unshielded power source. Jordy says that means a complete diagnostic check of the Enterprise power systems, all 4,000 of them. But I have the perfect man for the job. Jordy calls Reg and tells Reg he has another mystery for him. Somehow the molecular structure of this cup from 10 forward has been altered. We need to run through the power systems to see if there's a leak that caused this. Barclay said he was going to do that. Jordy says, you were? Barclay says, yes. She tried to explain the anti-grav unit failure. I still can't find nothing that makes sense. Data says it is possible that these two very disparate incidents could be related. Yeah, think? This was a better example of that scene. Data says a problem with the replicator would have affected the glass as well as the. Oh, I did that already. So Data says it's possible that these two very disparate incidents could be related. Brody is telling Riker, I wouldn't bother you with something this minor, Commander, but it may be a symptom of a more serious problem. Riker asks, do you think we will need to put into a starbase? Brody says, we have a better idea after Barclay runs a check on the power systems. Data says it was Lieutenant Barclay who first suggested a link between the two incidents. Picard comes in and asks if the investigation will affect our available power during the mission. Barclay says no. We will have to shut off some systems, but we will shut them down a few at a time. This is too funny. You're sitting there going, oh, good grief. Picard walks in and they tell him the situation. And Picard says, I look forward to your report, Mr. Broccoli. And they all just, everybody just freezes. Like, oh. So Barclay leaves. Data says metathesis is one of the most common pronunciation errors, sir. And he goes on and then he stops himself. So Geordi is talking to Guinan, and she says yes, she knows him. He comes in and stands at the bar. He doesn't say much. He orders a warm milk. Geordi says figures. Guinan says warm milk helps you sleep, LaForge. You should try it. What does this have to do with Barclay? Geordi says, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure the man out. Do you ever talk to him? Guinan says he doesn't talk much. Geordi says, does he have any friends? Guinan says, I haven't seen him with any. Geordi says, what do you do with a guy like that? Guinan says, I just serve him warm milk and let him be. Geordi says, I'm not so lucky. I can't let him be. He's my problem. Guinan says, he's imaginative. Geordi says, how do you know that? Guinan says, I know. Jody says, well, then maybe he's in the wrong line of work. Guinan says, engineering types don't appreciate imagination. Jody says, that's not it, Guinan. He just doesn't fit in around here. Guinan says, oh, Turkham. Jody says, what? Guinan says, Turkham, my mother's brother, sort of the family misfit. Everybody told me to stay away from him. Jody says, did you? Jordan, Guinan says, are you kidding? The only member of my family with a sense of humor? Except no one ever stayed around long enough to realize it but me. My mother tells me I remind her of him, and I probably do. The idea of fitting in just repels me. Jody says, maybe I'm not making myself clear, Guinan. Barclay is always late. The man is nervous. Nobody wants to be around the guy. Guinan says, if I felt nobody wanted to be around me, I'd probably be late and nervous too. Jody says, that's not the point. Guinan says, are you sure? We are so not going to talk about this. Beverly on the swing with Wesley eating pie and talking about Master Broccoli. Oh, good grief. Just, just, no. Captain finds out about this. What do you think he's going to say? Okay, so we're in 10 forward. Jordy is talking to Barclay. Barclay says he will request a transfer. He says the whole ship knows I can't cut it here. Jordy says, hey, Barclay, I've spent a few hours on the holodeck too, you know. Now, as far as I'm concerned, what you do on the holodeck is your own business as long as it doesn't interfere with your work. Barclay says, you're not going to tell anyone about this? Jordy says, I don't think everybody would appreciate your imagination like I do. It's kind of unusual recreating people you already know. Barclay says he needed to blow off steam. One of the officers has been getting on his back. All right. And it was you, Jordy. You're the one that's getting on my back. I just couldn't tell you what I wanted to your face, so I sort of got out of control. Um, uh, it's just therapeutic. Therapeutic. Have you talked to Counselor Troy about it? It's fine. It's fine. I'm in there. I'm just more comfortable. You don't know what the struggle has been for me, Commander. Oh, I like to help, but if I can't be afraid all the time forgetting somebody's name, not knowing what to do with your hands at night. I'm the guy who writes things down to remember to say at a party, and when he gets there, he hides in the corner with the potted plant. Jordy says you're just shy. Barclay says you just don't understand how serious this is. So then Chief O'Brien calls Jordy to engineering. O'Brien says he was synchronizing the phase transition coils. I didn't do anything different than I haven't done 1,000 times before. The test object is made of pure uranium. Jordy says, seems normal enough to me. And O'Brien says, watch this, and they do this, and then the object comes back like this. So then Jordy is giving his overview. A system analysis of Transporter Room 3 has yielded no suggestion of a cause for the latest malfunction aboard the Enterprise. And then we see Picard, Riker, and Geordi talking. Geordi says, we don't know. Picard asked if it was part of the same pattern. Geordi says, we don't know, and we don't know why only Transporter 3, Room 3 was affected. None of the other transporter rooms are malfunctioning. Riker says, yet. Picard says, when we reach Miami 4 in 22 hours, we all want transporters operational by then. I want a level 1 diagnostic across the board. Riker says, advise Mr. Barclay to join us on the bridge immediately. Jody says, oh, can we make that 1400 hours, sir? I have him working on something. Riker says, Mr. O'Brien, no maintenance on the transporter until further notice. Okay. When this first came on, I couldn't tell if it was real or fake or one of his hologram things. And then when she starts setting the lights and shit, I'm like, oh, good grief. And he runs out of there so fast. Ah! It just. So he runs out of there. And Troy tells Jordy, she just had the weirdest conversation. Well, you wait. It's gonna get weirder. So Rick's on the bridge, and he's like, Jordy, where's Barclay? And Jordy calls Barclay and nothing. So then he asks the computer, where is he? In the holodeck. So the three of them go to the holodeck and they see the three musketeers, Picard and Data and Jordy. It's just like good grief. And at first, Troy's kind of amused with it, and Riker wants to get rid of it, and Jordy's like, um, she's trying to work things out, and Jordy's like, I tried to warn you, and he's amused till himself shows up, and then Troy is amused, and Riker's like, no, 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 delete this until they round the corner. Suspense, suspense, suspense. I am the goddess of Anthony. You. There's just no words. So then Picard contacts him, and he's like, they had that malfunction where the warp drive increased to 7.25, and Data says compensating, and then Worf says, yeah, we dropped to 7, and then Picard says maintain that, and Picard asks Data what happened. Data says the matter antimatter injectors locked for a split second, and I don't know why, but they appear to be working normally. And Picard is then asks Geordi what's going on, and Geordi's like, "Well, I'm not exactly in engineering at this time." And Picard's like, "Well, yeah, I think you should return to engineering commander. I think that your hollow activities can wait till later." I want to know. I want to see what happens when Picard finds out what he was really doing. Oh, good God. Um. Uh, so on the way to engineering, Geordi says um, Barclay is explaining to Geordi that he couldn't get sleep, he couldn't keep his eyes open. And we know from the Voyager episodes that Barclay is more comfortable sleeping on the holodeck than he is in his own room. We know that from Voyager. So we will see this again on Voyager. And Jordy says, you had a chance to get some help from the real counselor, Troy, but instead you went back in there. Barclay says he knows, but he couldn't help himself. Jordy says, you are going to be able to write the book on hollow addiction. Jordy says he knows how easily it can be to get caught up, that he fell in love in there once, but he knew when it was time to turn it off and say goodbye. Remember the booby trap when he fell in love with Leah Brimes? And we will be seeing her again in season 4 in Galaxy's Child. So then they're engineering. Barclay says it's not a computer problem. The mechanism is physically jammed. I can't clear it. Then the bridge says speed is increasing. Geordi says we can't shut it down. Antimatter flow is increasing. She's accelerating out of control. There's nothing I can do. And we get the dramatic music. Oh my God, something crescendoing. Hey, something's happening. It's getting bad. It's getting worse. Okay, so the next scene is Geordi in engineering, and they are tossing around ideas, and Wesley is there. Then they are at the breach, and they're talking about releasing the saucer section, but Data says that's not a good idea. If they release it, it won't work. So Barclay says we've been looking for a systemic explanation, and there is a point with all of the systems that they are affected. What if we are transmitting something ourselves by touching it or touching something in the comm? We could have passed it on to the objects when you were realigning the magnetic capacitors. It was your glass, Duffy, and both of you were present in the cargo bay when the anti-graft failed. So O'Brien, the transporter, malfunctioned. There's a connection, and it's the touching of human touching. So they go back and forth, and they go back and forth. and then they figure out it was the containers. And Geordi and Barclay go and they examine the containers. They figure out the solution, and they supply the solution, and it works. And Geordi tells the captain they need to go to Starbase to fix it. And Barclay goes to the bridge and stands in front of the crew and announces his decision to leave. And I think this is the first time the whole episode we see the Doctor. I don't think we saw the Doctor the whole rest of the episode. This is well, except on the holodeck. Excuse me, except on the holodeck on the swing. And I really thought this was real, for and I couldn't figure it out until he gets up here, and I'm like, this is fake. He's not gonna walk up to the front of the bridge like this and make this big announcement. And you know what? There's no extras up here. It's just them. And he announces his decision to leave. This has Voyager deja vu on it. I guess we'll get to it when we get to Voyager, and then I'll be saying it has Hollow Pursuits echoes on it. So he says his tearful goodbyes. So today we talked about Hollow Pursuits, episode 169 of Disc 6 in season 3. We just finished Hollow Pursuits 169. Next week we'll talk about the most toys. Then we'll do Sarek, and then we'll do Maja Troy. Maja Troy. So please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. It's just me talking books, talking Star Trek. There's nothing special about me, and I really, really could use your help. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. And please have a good day. Enjoy your Friday. See you next week. Bye.